Welcome to the Pastor's Connection podcast, where we delve into the heart of ministry and explore the challenges and triumphs of pastoral life. Join us as we connect with inspiring leaders, share insightful stories, and equip one another with tools for effective ministry. Together, we can foster a community of support, encouragement, and growth in our calling. I am your host, Thomas Osterkamp. I lead Beachside Community Church here in Palm Coast, Florida, and I help lead the Pastor's Connection Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Family Meeting. The Family Meeting exists to help you have the meaningful relationships that you desire in your marriage and family. Along with the podcast, Thomas and Lysandra offer books, devotionals, as well as speaking at marriage retreats and conferences, providing real, practical help for ministry families. Contact them at info@familymeeting.org to help the marriages and families in your church grow stronger today. Today's episode, we have with us Nathan Cravatt with us. I'm excited for this episode. He is the student pastor of Oakwood Baptist in Chickamauga, Georgia. I think I got all that right.
That was very close. Yeah, Chickamauga, Georgia.
Chickamauga, right outside Chattanooga.
There's a reason I always say Chattanooga. Yes, sir.
So excited to have you on today. I appreciate you taking some time to be with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
So today we're going to be talking about some of the things that have happened in Nathan's life. And before we get into that, Nathan, would you just share kind of a little bit about what your family dynamic is like? Introduce them to us?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a pastor, so my family's perfect, no problems whatsoever.
Totally.
Everything's just great. Nah, man, we have a very real household, and I've been in ministry since, I guess, '03. Really, I've been in ministry my entire life because my dad was a pastor, and he was ran a boys' home, the director of a children's home, and
oh wow!
So I brought up around ministry my entire life, and when I got saved at around 25, God just called me immediately to the ministry. So this is something I've been around. And the best thing about me, I tell people all the time, the best thing about me is my family. You don't really know me if you don't know my family, because they're just amazing. Everybody that meets them loves them, unless for some reason, they what's the easiest way to put this? My family's very discerning, so
okay.
I love my family, and we've seen everything. You've been in ministry for years, and we've seen everything in the church and the ministry. But man, my family is just the absolute best part of me. I love them, and I've been married to my wife Carrie for almost 30 years. March will be 30 years.
Awesome.
And we've been through every season you can imagine, good, bad, ugly, and God has used it all to make us more like Christ. And I believe with all my heart the saying that marriage is the anvil on which Christ shapes us into his image. That is a very, very true statement.
Great analogy.
Yeah, it is. And God definitely has put us through some fires, but we've come through closer to one another and closer to Christ. And my wife is just an amazing woman. She's in nursing school. She's been an accountant. She's been an amazing pastor's wife, and she's raised 4 beautiful children, and just an amazing woman. But she's starting a new season of her life, finishing up her nursing school, and awesome. She's working at the same hospital where I almost lost my life last year. So God's brought that full circle. My son Austin and his wife Kate live in Jacksonville, Florida. They've been there for about a month. And stepping out into a new season for them. They love it there so far. My daughter Elena is 26, and she works in sports medicine. She works in the insurance filing side of that, and works with I don't know how many hundreds of clinics around the United States and the world. And she loves her career and does really, really good at it. Amazing girl. Elise is my third child. She is at Lee University, which is about 30 minutes from me.
Okay.
So thankful that God sent her close by. That's where my son went also. He was in business. She's in the nursing program. So thankful for a Christian university to send her to. And then Mia is my baby, and she's 16, and she's a junior here in Chickamauga. And she is actually in my youth group now. So
cool.
Excited about this new season of being her youth pastor.
Yeah, that's always a fun situation. kids either really love it that their dad's a youth pastor or they really hate it. So
She definitely has mixed emotions. So
yeah, I'm sure.
she didn't get excited when I announced this, but she was just like, yeah. I've done this before. So she knows.
Yeah. So celebrating 30 years in March, do you guys have any like special way you plan to celebrate?
Yeah, we were planning a Europe trip for our 25th anniversary, which landed in 2021.
Okay,
And
yeah.
obviously there wasn't much travel going on in 2021. So we canceled that. And I said, you know what? I'll agree to cancel it if you'll agree that on our 30th, we're going to go and spend a couple weeks in Europe. So we're looking forward to that. And probably won't go in March. That's probably not the best season to travel, but maybe middle of the year next year when the kids are out of school and the other ones can take vacation. We're all going to go as a family, because originally it was just going to be husband and wife trip, and we were talking about it one day, and she said, man, if we're going to Europe, I'd really like for my kids to be there. And I looked at her like I was mad, and I was like,
Right.
you know what? I said, I would too. I want them to go too. So we both voted unanimously to
Nice.
invite the kids. So we're going to go as a family, and it might turn into a national lampoon. Like we take Europe. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but excited about that. Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. So she's kind of making a transition in careers. Did you know your medical event have anything to do with that? Was this already in the works?
It did. Yeah, it definitely did. She was going through nursing school. We had two children, and there was an 8-year gap between our next two children, our second child and our third child. Yeah. And we thought we were through with our family, and she was going through nursing school once the two kids were in school. And she was halfway through that when she realized that God was telling her in her heart that our family wasn't finished yet. And I had been praying for that and always wanted to have a bunch of kids. So we had two more kids, and she had planned to pick back up in the nursing program. I think you have 5 years to continue, okay. And she missed that window. And so she just kind of went in the direction of being an accountant, but that definitely wasn't she didn't find a lot of joy and fulfillment in that. And when this happened with my medical condition last year when I got sick, she definitely felt called to that, because let me tell you, it is a ministry, and we had doctors and nurses that ministered to us and loved us. Yeah. The chaplain at Erlanger Hospital, just incredible guy. Bobby was incredible with our family, and I've seen him minister to a lot of other people. Also have plans to get involved in that myself because of this experience. So,
okay, cool. And we'll get into that in just a second here. What kind of? I know your dad, was a pastor, and you grew up in it. What is your ministry experience?
So I, as I said, when I got saved when I was 25, immediately felt the call to preach, and prayed that God would allow me to be in youth ministry like my dad was. And I believe in 2005, I took my first youth ministry job. I started at a church. I started seminary the same week, and the same week I started a nonprofit organization called Young America Ministries, and we went into the trailer parks and projects in Chattanooga and government housing areas, and that ministry is still going. But yeah, the same week I went into seminary and full-time ministry at two different positions, and just got baptized by fire, as they say.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it is. Looking back, it's very crazy.
That's cool,
though. So did that. I was in youth ministry off and on until 2016, when God called me to plant Hope Church in Trenton, Georgia. Then in 2021, God called us to Anderson, South Carolina. I helped a buddy of mine, Chad Gamble. There he was in transition period. I helped him with the college group, the high school group, and I was the associate pastor. So was wearing multiple hats there. I was there for a year with him, and God opened the door for me to plant a church with Hope Church in Asheville, North Carolina. So I planted my second Hope Church in Asheville as a part of the Hope Church family. And did that all the way up until October of 2024 when I got sick.
Okay. So that's kind of a good segue into the whole story and the whole ordeal. Can you just tell us kind of how everything unfolded and kind of what happened?
Yeah. So I have to go back to September 28th or 29th of 2024. That's when Hurricane Helene hit Asheville, North Carolina. Surprised everybody. We expected some rain, maybe some strong winds, but no one had any idea what was about to happen. And that morning, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd been up half the night because it just got worse and worse through the night. And that morning, I remember waking up probably the third or fourth time at 8 o'clock and glanced and saw my wife standing at the window. And the next thing I knew, a 90-foot oak tree hit the top of our house directly over our bed.
Oh,
and was a miracle of God that tree did not go all the way through our house. We had people from Samaritan's Purse that came to our house later that week, and they said they had seen smaller trees go through bigger houses and end up in the basement. Well,
Wow.
my daughter was in the basement on the back side of the house, right in the line of the tree. Me and my wife were on the main floor, and then my two daughters were on the back of the house, directly in the line of the tree upstairs. And so God just miraculously spared our family in that. So that ended up getting us back to the Chattanooga, North Georgia area. We couldn't get out of Asheville. We tried for a day. All the roads were shut down. Eventually, some friends called us, got in touch with us when we got far enough from Asheville to get a cell signal, and said, get to the airport. Someone's sending a private jet. So we literally went to the private hangar, waited, and a private jet came and picked up my family, got us back to Chattanooga. We had friends waiting for us on the tarmac with keys to a Suburban, two full pizzas,
Nice.
Starbucks drinks for all of my family, and just hugged our necks and said, we love you. We've been praying for you. Welcome back to Chattanooga. We're here to do anything we can. They had a house lined up for us to stay in. And so I got my family settled here. 2 days later, loaded up a 26-foot box truck and headed back to Asheville, North Carolina. And Hope Church was one of the first groups that had disaster relief back into Asheville because the roads were still, most of them were still closed down. We came in the one way that was opened up through Greenville, South Carolina. So I barely got that big truck up the mountain there, and we got into Asheville. And for the next 2 weeks, I did disaster relief in Asheville and got to share the gospel with hundreds of people. We set up a tent, and I think it was a 40-foot tent, and we had it absolutely packed full. Hundreds of people coming through every day, giving clothing, sanitary items, food, just cleaning items, all sorts of stuff, batteries, flashlights, and providing. We had tons of water. And we were there doing that for 2 weeks. And then on October 13th of 2024, me and another Hope Church pastor, Tommy Walton, everybody refers to him affectionately as Chicken. He's almost 7 foot tall, biggest chicken you've ever seen. But Tommy is a great, godly man, love him, dear friend of mine. And we got on an airplane in Charlotte and flew to the country of Nepal. And we were there for 2 weeks, and just the most amazing missions trip. I've been on dozens of missions trips. I've seen 24 different countries, been able to pursue that passion, sharing the gospel on multiple continents, multiple countries, and love working with local ministries that are on the ground, and through long-term support and short-term support on the ground, serving alongside of them. And so we had spent a year raising money for this missions trip, and we said, you know what, God's calling us to do this. When we got there, the best trip I've ever been on. Everything was just, God blessed it. He prepared the way before us. There were people saved. We were able to do training for pastors. We were able to put roofs on 2 different churches. We were able to do a youth conference and a bunch of other things I'm forgetting. We actually backpacked through the jungles up into the mountains and went to a lot of these village churches where we were able to share the gospel with people that had never heard the gospel. And we partnered with a group of about 40 to 50 church planters that are planting in the mountains through one family. One father, his 4 sons are serving with him, and they're all pastors. And this family has been able to network with 40 to 50 other pastors, and their goal is
Incredible.
to plant churches in all the districts and provinces in Nepal by the year 2040. So
Wow.
we've been involved with them since the year, I think 2019. I went on my first trip in 2020, went back in 23, and then went back again last year. And on the way home from that trip, we laid over in Greece, stayed in Athens for about 2.5 days, and I began to feel sick. When I got home, I had a busy week scheduled for the week I got home, because obviously as a pastor, I'd been gone for 2 weeks. I had a lot I had to do. So I was back and forth between Chattanooga and Asheville and Virginia and South Carolina, North Carolina, had meetings in Greensboro, just all kinds of stuff going on, and got home on Halloween, Thursday, October 31st, and I barely made it home, barely walked inside the house, got to the bed, and just collapsed in the bed. I was supposed to go to a party that night. That's the reason I rushed home so quickly to be with my family from my trip, and I was just too tired and too sick. So I stayed in the bed all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, and Sunday morning at 2 o'clock, or Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, my wife had brought home a test for COVID and the flu, and I tested negative for both of those. And she said, something's wrong. Let's go to the hospital. I was resistant to that because we didn't have insurance. So she was like, look, this doesn't matter. Something is wrong with you. By the time I got to the hospital, my blood pressure was 70/40. My organs were shutting down. My kidneys were completely non-functioning. My spleen had completely dissolved into my body. My liver was shutting down. I had double pneumonia. My extremities, my fingers and my toes were turning black. My entire body swelled twice its size because my kidneys were not working, and just immediately went in from bad to worse. And I was in the emergency room until 6 o'clock the next morning, when they finally got a ICU room cleared out for me. They took me up to MICU and immediately put me on life support, intubated me, put me on round-the-clock dialysis, and put me on a breathing tube, a feeding tube, and began to medicate me, pump my system full of antibiotics. And for the next 6 days, I was mostly unconscious. There were a few times where I came to and saw people and had a short conversation, and then I would be back out. By Wednesday night, they told my wife and kids that I would not survive to the weekend. And they said there's nothing else they could do. There was no hope. Those were the words that were said to my family. There's no hope. We're just waiting. And so they told me goodbye Wednesday night. I don't remember that. But Thursday night, I remember my family gathering around my bed. My eyes were open, and I had to go ask my family if I was just remembering this, if I somehow supernaturally saw it, or if my eyes were open. And they said, no, your eyes were open, but you couldn't respond, and we couldn't get you to talk to us. But I remember watching my family gather around the doctors, talk to them. They were weeping. The doctors left, and then my family talked to me. I couldn't really comprehend everything they were saying, but I knew they were saying goodbye. And I watched each one of them weep, tell me goodbye, and walk out of the room. And I knew I was dying, and I knew this was the end. And I don't have time to share everything that I experienced, but I experienced crossing over. I was in the presence of God and knew that my life was over, and felt his presence, felt his glory, and I knew that this was it. And I asked him if he would allow me to come back and be with my family. And I was just weeping and asked if he would let me come back and be with my family, that I would serve him for the rest of my life and love my family better than I ever had. And through that experience, I very vividly remember being in the presence with God. And when I prayed and asked God to allow me to come back at 4 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning, against all odds, my eyes opened and breath came back into my body. I visibly remember being in the presence of God and opening my eyes and being back in the hospital room. And the nurse came in. I scared her to death. She said, "How are you doing, Mr. Nathan?" And I turned my head and I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And of course, I wasn't talking like that. I was more talking like this. It was like a whisper. And her eyes got huge. She was terrified. And she said, then her fear turned into the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life. And she said, I'm good. She said, do you know where you're at? And she began to ask me a series of questions. I knew everything except for the period of time that I had been asleep. It felt like I fell asleep and woke back up a few hours later and had missed 6 days of my life. We had a new president. It was just, I woke up to an entirely different country than I went to sleep in. And it was a wild experience. Felt like a movie. And they began to run out and get the doctors. The doctors rushed in. There was probably a dozen doctors. Actually, there were more than that because I had a team of about a dozen doctors that had been working with me all week. And there were doctors from other departments that were coming just to see, because the doctors were saying, this is a miracle. There's no possible way we could be talking to this man and he could be responding to us after what we left last night. So they said they didn't understand it. And I said, well, I can tell you right now, God healed me. I felt him touch my body and heal me. And I was in his presence and he sent me back. And I know it. I remember it very vividly. And I just made my mind up right then. I was going to give God the glory for everything that happened, because there was just no human experience or explanation for what I experienced. And so I was in the hospital overall for over a month, and then had to go into rehab for 8 days. I couldn't even walk. When I woke back up, I had become an old man in about 6 days. I was the strongest and most physically fit I'd ever been in my life when I went into the hospital. And when I woke up, I was shriveled up. My muscles had atrophied. I couldn't stand up, couldn't sit up by myself, couldn't swallow. I was practically dead. And had a long road to recovery. If I had known then how hard the road to recovery would be, I don't think I would have been as excited about it. But I ended up having multiple fingers on my left hand amputated. Lost multiple toes on both feet. And through it all, I've been in an incredible amount of pain, been through a lot of suffering, mental, emotional, physical pain, a lot of spiritual struggles, sufferings through this. But I just want you to know that through it all, God was more near to me than he ever has been in my life. He taught me so much about weakness. Paul talks a lot about weakness. I never understood it until I went through this season in my life. But Paul talks about how in our weakness, he is our strength, and how God is near to those who are really suffering and struggling. And even the psalmist talks about how God's near to the brokenhearted. And my family definitely went through a lot, but they were by my side through the entire time. God not only healed my body, brought me back to life, he actually brought my kidneys back. The doctor said that it was a miracle that I lived. They said, don't expect to ever be off of dialysis for the rest of your life. They said, we can talk about signing you up for a kidney transplant at your age. We could probably do that. They said, but there's no way. The odds are against your kidneys ever working. About 3 weeks later, my kidneys started working again. And my numbers, I think now, are better than they were before this happened. So the doctors actually consider that a miracle too, because they were just, it just seemed impossible. But we've seen so many miracles, financial miracles. We had millions of dollars worth of debt that the hospital forgave. And we still have thousands of dollars worth of debt that we're working through, but that's manageable as opposed to millions of dollars. My wife at one point told the doctors, she said, look, this is monopoly money at this point. You just do whatever you need to do to keep them alive. We can't afford what you've done. Just do what you got to do. So they kind of laughed about that, but there's no way we could list all the financial miracles, all the churches that gave, people that surrounded my bed, prayed for me. One of the most memorable is my best friend who has ALS. He came in, he's a full quadriplegic now, is in a wheelchair, has to speak through typing on a machine with his eyes. And he came into the hospital room against the wishes of my doctor, but they snuck him in and got him in there. And he prayed over me Thursday night. And about 6 hours after he prayed over me, I woke up.
Wow.
So God just moves in mysterious ways. And we had churches all over the world, all over the country praying for us. My wife documented everything. Every day she updated her social media on Facebook. And there were thousands of people that were following that. I woke up, had no idea that all that was going on while I was unconscious. But man, God was just so faithful. And I've been able to go over the past few months. I've started traveling and going to different churches and sharing my story. And God has just been so good to our family through our suffering. He's sovereign. He's in control in our darkest hours. We believed what we had always taught, that God is sovereign, that God is in control. But when we didn't know what was going on or what was going to happen, we just clung to that truth. And my family was such a powerful testimony to the gospel. And if I had never woken up, they still would have been a powerful testimony to the gospel. And all the doctors, the nurses, everybody that visited said that they came there to encourage my family. And my family ended up encouraging them because they were such a witness. My wife and kids had to pray around my bed. The last night, they just joined hands and they said, God, we want you to save our dad, but if you don't, we still love you. We still trust you, and you're still good, and we're still going to give you the glory for this. And they opened their hands and they said, God, we trust you. And we know that God doesn't always give us the miracles that we ask for and we pray for. Right. And I just want to say he's still good, even when the healing doesn't come. He's still good, even if he hadn't brought me back to life. My family still would have stood up and said, God is good, and we love him and we trust him.
I find it so ironic that the guy who started two Hope churches, they're telling his family there's no hope.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm always fascinated by stories like yours. I just finished reading the book Seeing the Supernatural by Lee Strobel. I don't know if you've read it or not, but
not yet.
So in it, it's kind of like Case for Christ, but he's proving the supernatural and the afterlife and all of that. And so part of the book, he's talking about testimonies from people like you that have had those experiences that are absolutely unexplainable. Like one lady floating above her body and seeing a sticker on the upper side of a fan blade that nobody else would be able to see, or a shoe on a windowsill on the third floor.
Yeah.
And then, them actually verifying that those things did actually happen and there's no way else they would know. So a wonderful proof that of who God is and the miracle that he's done in your life, and that he's not done with you yet. He's got a lot of things to do. That is absolutely powerful. So in moments like this, moments of crisis, you wake up, you've got a long, hard road to get to where you are today. What thoughts or prayers are kind of running through your mind?
Well, for me, I knew I was dying. I knew that God miraculously, supernaturally healed my body and answered my prayer and many people's prayers for me to come back. And it just felt like such a gift to be here with my family. I was just overjoyed. And honestly, I still wake up every single day thankful to be here, because there's not a fiber of my being after what I've experienced. And I could go into a lot more detail than what I did about the spiritual experience I had when I was in that bed. And I very vividly believe with all my heart that my spirit had left my body and I was crossing over. But I believe with all my heart, man, that God brought me back. He has me here for a reason. And I'm just overwhelmed and overjoyed that he allowed me to be here. So we prayed in the hospital and many times since then that God would get glory through this story, that he wouldn't allow our suffering to be wasted. And I don't believe God wastes our suffering. Yeah. And I also very candidly said, God, please let me learn this lesson the first time, because I don't want to have to go through this again. Whatever it is you're trying to teach me, please let me learn it, because it has been incredibly, incredibly difficult. But he's been our rock. I mean, when you go through something like that, you cannot fake it. When you go through something like that, it either proves your faith was strong or it proves that you didn't truly believe, and many people turn from their faith in those moments. But I believe with all my heart that God allowed me to experience that. And as I was saying, there's not a fiber of my being that is afraid of dying when that time comes, and I will die again at some point, just like Lazarus. did. I'm
Yep.
not afraid. Honestly, there are moments and there are times where I remember what happened to me so vividly that I long to be back there and long
Hmm.
to experience that again. So nothing in me is afraid of that, but man, I feel like every second God lets me be here with my family is a gift. And now being back in ministry, Him allowing me to step back into youth ministry just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I've been basically on the sidelines for the past 10 months, and God is just now allowing me to step back into ministry. And the last few months I've traveled and shared my story in churches and stuff like that. But man, I'm just excited to be connected to a local church and to
Yeah.
be investing in students, especially my daughter, and to be able to work with her. Just God is so, so good.
Well, and it's very much reminds me of the Apostle Paul, who's like, I have a desire to go to be with
Yeah.
the Lord, but I know right now it's beneficial for you that I'm here, and I can sense that in your testimony as well.
Yeah.
That hey, there's work to do.
And just so you know, I lean reformed. You can, your audience can infer whatever they want to mean on that, but that's generally how I define myself. I lean reformed and believe in the providence of God, the sovereignty of God very strongly. But I was so hesitant to even talk about this after I experienced it because of my theology. And I was very afraid of making this about me and making the
Yeah.
story about me and what I experienced. And I began to share it with just friends and family members, what I experienced in great detail. And every single time I would share it, they would just weep and they would just
Yeah.
say, this is powerful. You have to share this. And so I've somewhat reluctantly stepped into sharing what God has allowed me to experience. Not all of it, but I've shared parts of it because one lady especially told me after I shared it with her, she was just weeping, and she said, I lost my parents a few years ago. And she said, just hearing what you experienced gives me hope that they truly were not in pain anymore, that they were in God's presence. They were experiencing His joy. And she said, it makes it so much easier for me to realize from someone that I trust who's been through that to know that there truly is something better waiting on us.
Yeah. Well, and I believe that God allows us to go through these experiences so that we can testify of His goodness, of His glory, of His power.
Amen.
That it's not about Nathan, it's not about the doctors or
Yeah.
anything else. Like, this is something that God truly did, and
Mm.
His name has been glorified and will continue, I believe, even through conversations like this. So as you kind of think about going through recovery and all the stuff you had to go through to get back on your feet, just literally getting back on your feet, were there any particular scriptures or promises of God that just really became real to you in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest one I've been drawn to is the verse out of Lamentations that we always quote and we sing about. Great is His faithfulness. That every morning His mercies are new, and His great is His faithfulness. That lamentation, that song was actually written in the middle of the fall of, or right after the fall of Jerusalem
Yeah.
and the fall of Judah, and God punishing them, and yet Jeremiah acknowledging that in the middle of, chapter 1, chapter 2, even parts of chapter 3 are so dark, just
Yeah.
suffering, trials, and this was suffering that they deserved. Now Jeremiah didn't; he was faithful to God, but he was called by God to be a prophet to an disobedient people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the middle of the darkest hours, he writes that God's faithfulness is great, and that was our experience, that God was so faithful to us. Also, familiar verses like Romans 8:28, that for those we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good to those who are called according to His purpose. I've quoted that verse, memorized that verse as a kid. I thought I knew what that meant until I walked through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized some things about that verse, that is specifically a promise for Christians, for those who love God, for those who called according to His purpose. Those are
Yeah.
believers. Those are saved, born again people. And this promise is specifically for them, that God works all things together for good. He doesn't say that all things are good. He
Yeah.
says that He takes all things and uses them for good, the same way that, a chef will take all these different ingredients that if you tried to eat them on their own, they taste terrible and they're
Yeah.
bitter, and they on their own, they are not a pleasant experience. But when he puts it in the cooker and he puts it on the stove, he puts it on the oven, it begins to cook and those things begin to meld. It actually creates a new molecular structure. It goes from being one thing to becoming something else. I think that's what Paul is talking about. God takes all the things that we experience in life, the good, the bad, the hard, the difficult, the trials, the triumphs, the tragedies, and he uses them for our good. He uses even the plans of the enemy to accomplish his eternal plans. And going all the way back to us going to Asheville, the storm, the tree hitting our house, which is actually what got us back to Chattanooga, which actually got me in Erlanger Hospital, where a very specific set of doctors would know how to treat this and keep me alive until God did the miracle. And I honestly believe God did multiple miracles through my nurses, through my doctors, and through the medical staff there, and through medicine. It's God that allows those discoveries to be made, and I definitely want to give him glory for all of it. So there's so many verses. I was reading through, every year I read through the Bible with a group of about 7 or 8 guys. I always pick a new group of guys at the beginning of the year and invite them into it, and we just journal every day. On the YouVersion app, you can do Bible studies with other people, and it has areas where you can comment on that. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I started inviting other guys into that to get them in the habit of reading through the Bible, because I used to really struggle in that area. And matter of fact, I failed miserably. And even as a pastor, I couldn't faithfully read my Bible every day. I would study for sermons, but I wasn't getting into it devotionally, just for time with me and God. And so as I began to find victory in that, and going from trying to force myself to do it to like, I cannot wait. Like, it's everything I can do not to read ahead to the next day, because I absolutely love the reading plan I'm in. And I've done so many different plans. I love chronological plans. I'm doing one of those this year, and inviting those guys into it to read through with me. Seems like every day I read something that I see differently this year. And specifically when I got to Job, man, it blew my mind. It's always been one of my favorite books for many reasons. But when I read it this year, it felt like I had never read it before. I've never noticed this. I've never seen it. And I don't think I went through as much as Job did, thank God. But the physical pain, I think I can relate with Job in the physical pain and his loss in that. And I'm still walking through some of that. So Job ministered to me this year, and Lamentations ministered to me this year in a way that I can't even explain. And it's just, God's truth is always good. It's always true, but there are times in your life where it's just exactly what you need to get you through the next few hours. And that's what I've experienced this year.
And that is the beauty of the word, is that it is alive, it's active, and the way that he uses it at different points and different seasons of our life is incredible. Did they ever pinpoint exactly what it is that happened to you?
So they believe I got dengue fever in the jungles of Nepal. They're not 100% sure, because by the time they tested me, it had been 10 days after exposure, and it was too late to test. It had already gotten out of my system. But the thing that almost killed me was sepsis. I was in septic shock. There's sepsis, then there's severe sepsis, then there's septic shock. And by the time you get to septic shock, you literally have hours. Every hour you delay going to the hospital and getting on antibiotics, the only thing that can really save your life, every hour you delay, they say your life expectancy goes down 10%. So I waited probably a full day and a half in septic shock. Looking back, when they explained what I was going through, I could tell them when it started. So there was a full day and a half when I was literally dying in the cabin, in the bed that my friends allowed us to stay in. Yeah. So sepsis and septic shock, I'd heard the words before, but never knew what they were. It's the third leading cause of death in United States hospitals. It's the most expensive condition that is treated in United States hospitals. and it is very, very serious because it affects every other system in your body.
Yeah.
And basically, it's an unregulated infection. So it could have been I don't know if I mentioned I had appendicitis as well, a very
Okay.
mild case of appendicitis. It could have been the infection there, but all it needs is some infection that for some reason the body does not regulate, and your autoimmune system has an adverse effect, and basically your body starts attacking itself. And if my wife were here, she could explain my hemoglobin levels, my white blood cell
Sure.
counts, red blood cell counts, all that stuff was abysmal. It was just horrible. And one of the leading factors in sepsis is they look at your lactic acid, and depending on your level of lactic acid, it shows them how much your internal organs are breaking down, and that lactic acid is released into your bloodstream. And my lactic acid was so high that my brother-in-law, who is also a nurse, he's over an entire wing at another branch of Erlanger here in town. When he found out, he called my wife and he started asking questions. When he found out I was septic, he said, "What's his lactic numbers?" And she told him, and he just got silent on the phone. This was day one. He got silent, and he said, finally, after she said it seemed like forever, and finally he said, "Carrie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He can't survive that." And she said, "I know." And so that was day one. My family had to live through 6 days of knowing that, literally seeing me go from bad to worse every day. But and just shows how miraculous God is and his power.
Yeah. Which is so, it's so amazing to think about what he did and what he brought you through.
Yeah.
So most of the people who are going to listen to this podcast are pastors, ministry leaders. So as you think about what your church did to help you and your family walk through this time, or what are some of the good things they did, or what are some of the things that you'd say, hey, if somebody you know is walking through something similar, these are the most helpful, beneficial things that you can do? What's some practical things that our church leaders can take away from helping people?
I just want to say that the church takes a lot of hits, and some of them we deserve because we're not perfect. But man, I have seen the church shine through this experience, and my family has seen the church shine, and I'm so proud for my kids, because everybody, even pastors, worry about their kids' faith and how deep it really is.
Yeah.
I was a pastor's kid, and there came a point of crisis of faith in my life, and I almost turned away from the faith and called out to God to truly show me the truth, and God did. He answered my prayer. But I know that all my kids are going to have to one day become, have their own relationship with God.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of them. I saw how they shine. And a lot of that came through the church. Pastors, churches, individuals, man, they were blessing my family with gifts, with food, with flowers, with just anything you could imagine. They were giving gift cards. I still don't think we've spent all the gift cards that people gave to my family when I was unresponsive in the hospital. And people drove in from out of town, flew in from out of town, multiple states, had people in other countries that were praying for us. They loved on my family in a very, very, very tangible way, in specific ways. My good friend Brian Edwards spent time with each of my kids in the hospital and just hugged them and said, "I want you to know how much your daddy loved you and how proud he was of you. And everywhere he went, he talked about you." And just loved on them and encouraged them. And that's just one example. But so many people just loved on us and prayed for us, gave financial gifts, just told us whatever you need, whatever we can do. And I'm just so thankful for that. And the church is God's main avenue of blessing this world. And I just want to brag on the church because I love it. I believe in it. And I want to encourage pastors not to downplay visiting someone in the hospital, not downplaying visiting someone who's sick. Jesus literally said, "When you do it to them, you do it to me." And I believe with all my heart that people have a whole lot of rewards in heaven after the way they loved and served my family. I've been a part of the church my entire life. I turned 50 on Sunday, and I've been a part of the church my entire life. I've never seen anything like this, the way the church came together and different denominations. Man, one of the things that blessed me more than anything was I had multiple independent fundamental Baptist churches that weren't my biggest fan that sent checks to my family and said, our church is praying for you. And people that we have doctrinal, theological differences with, they were praying for my family and loved on me. And my brother-in-law is Tim Fallour. I don't know if you know that name.
No.
He's in Florida, but very independent fundamental Baptist, and his church is one of the leading IFB churches, and he speaks in IFB churches all over the country. And we have disagreements, but man, he loved on my family, prayed for my family. His church prayed for us and offered to do anything that we needed. I just saw the church shine, and I'm so thankful for how the church loved us. And it brought my family closer together. It brought me closer to a lot of other people. There were multiple people that, over the years being a pastor, people betray you, you have disagreements, and you even betray other people, their trust, maybe not intentionally, but I know there are people that weren't my biggest fan that I've had multiple people drive in from out of town or fly in from out of town and come to my bedside and say, hey, I'm sorry that we had disagreements. I just want you to know I love you and you're my brother and I'd do anything in the world for you. And man, I'm so thankful for that. And God used this season to humble me. And I really want to challenge pastors to examine your life. I don't think I would have told you I was a proud guy. And most people that talked about me before, I don't think they would have described me as being proud. But when you're in the presence of God, you see yourself. The writer of Hebrews says, we will be naked and uncovered before the eyes of him to whom we have to give account. And I experienced a taste of that. And I saw things in my life that I had been justifying, things that, gray area, walking the line, I can explain it away and justify it. When I was in the presence of God, I saw myself. It was not a fun experience. I saw my hypocrisy. I saw where I had compromised with sin. I saw where I had not been a faithful husband, father, pastor, and things that before I think I would have said, oh, that's small. Yeah, I need to get better in that area. But when I was exposed to God's glory, I saw every flaw in myself, and it was extremely painful. The most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life was seeing myself in comparison to God's holiness. And I came back with a deep desire to walk in holiness and to watch my walk and to guard my heart more than I ever had as a pastor before. And I've surrendered, since this has happened, I've surrendered every area of my life to God, things that I'd struggled with for years, things that, pride, little areas that I didn't even consider pride, that just looking back on, it was about me, it wasn't about God, and it wasn't about his kingdom. And for the first time in my life, I truly feel like a mirror was put up and showed me all the flaws and the blemishes. And honestly, I part of the reason I asked God to allow me to come back was I wanted to serve him more faithfully, and I wanted to be a better steward of the things he had blessed me with. And I just want to challenge pastors that you got to work on yourself before you work on your ministry. You need to be honest with God. You need to examine every area of your life. You need to pray the Psalm, search me, O God, see if there's any wicked way in me, and be real, be humble, be willing to ask for forgiveness, be willing to forgive people that have offended you. And life is so short. I just woke up with a new awareness of my true priorities, being my family first. And I've always said that, but man, I feel like I'm living it out now for the first time in my life. But family first, obviously God is first, but when it comes to our ministry, our family is our first ministry.
Yeah.
And then faithfully serving God and not fighting for political advancement, not fighting for your name and your advancement and your fame, but just faithfully serving God in whatever he gives you to do. And I just want to tell you, a lot of people have been like, man, what are you doing going back to being a youth pastor after being a lead pastor for the last 9 years? And I just look at him and say, man, I'm just amazed that God would even use me to be a youth pastor. I'm just amazed that he would allow me to serve him in his kingdom in any way whatsoever, because I don't deserve this. And I'm just dust compared to him. Yet he loves me and he has a purpose for me and he's gifted me. And I'm excited to use whatever gifts I have to glorify him. And I'm still not perfect, man. I remember the first few days in the hospital after I woke up, I just thought, I don't know. I can't imagine ever sinning again. But it didn't take too long where I did sin again, and I lost my temper, and I was ugly to my family, and I was, I've had some really bad days emotionally and psychologically, like post-sepsis syndrome is very, very damaging to your body. And I basically, for the first time in my life, had to struggle with severe depression, severe, anxiety, loss of desire to do anything, and felt like it was pointless, like God should have just let me die. And the enemy was in my head, in my ear, like nonstop. But daily, God was just so faithful to me through all of that. And I don't claim to be a perfect Christian, and I know I never will be until I see him face to face. But I know I serve a perfect Savior, and I know the power of the Holy Spirit is so great inside us that we don't have to justify and make excuses for our sin. The power that is in us, we're more than conquerors, and we have the ability through the Holy Spirit to overcome sin and to overcome strongholds and to have a faithful ministry. And I just want to challenge pastors to quit making excuses, quit hiding things, quit lying about it, bring your sin into the light, talk to another pastor about it, talk to a counselor, do whatever you need to do. Put your sin behind you and walk in the light with God, and he will bless you and he will use you.
And it just reminds me of Isaiah's story where he sees God high and lifted up and is face to face with his holiness and recognizes exactly who he is. And for you to literally have that experience, but that's something that we, especially as leaders, church leaders, spiritual leaders, should be having those moments where we're getting on our face before God and letting him take a look at exactly who we are. What a powerful challenge that you have given to us. I think of the difficult road that you have and are continuing to walk with your rehabilitation. And you talked a little bit about the depression, the discouragement, and all of that. And I know that we have pastors who are walking through their own season of hardship or loss. What are some words of hope and encouragement that you could share with them?
First thing I would say is that it's worth it. We get to serve a great God. We get to serve a holy, righteous, powerful creator of the universe. And we're serving him not for comfort and not for our own pleasure. Now there is pleasure involved. There is joy involved, but there are also many dark days, and we serve the God of the universe. And when we go through suffering, we're joining him in his suffering. And I really haven't had to suffer much in my life. I've always been healthy. I've always been pretty happy, been a positive person. And man, I've been able to experience suffering and realize what Paul was talking about when he talked about the fellowship of his suffering. And God never wastes that suffering. He uses it for his glory and for our good to help shape us into the image of Christ. So I want to tell you that you're serving the Almighty God, and he is using you in the way he sees fit. And we can't second guess the things he allows to happen to us. If anybody could have complained, it should have been Job. It should have been Joseph. It should have been Daniel. It should have been Moses. They went through incredible difficulties, incredible trials, not just for a month in the hospital, not just for a year and a half of rehabilitation. I'm talking Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years and then back in the wilderness for another 40 years because of the disobedience of the people. Man, David waited for 15, 20 years. I can't remember exactly how long, but Joseph waited for 16, 17 years for God's promises to come through. And I just want to encourage pastors. God is doing things intentionally. Nothing happens to God's servants by accident. Nothing is random. And everything that God allows to happen in our life, it is for our good and it is for His glory. And the second thing I would say is that we get to serve the greatest mission in history. People serve political causes. People give their lives in wars for their family and for their friends. We literally get to lay our lives down, to shed our blood and our tears and spend our lives, to spend and to be spent, as the Apostle Paul says, for the cause of God, not just the glory of God. That's the main reason, but also for the cause of God. The gospel is advancing. His truth is marching on. And what we are a part of is worth suffering. It's worth trials and tragedies. And man, everything I've been through, if I had 1,000 lives to live, I would lay every single one of them down for the gospel, because the gospel of Jesus Christ is the greatest cause in all of human history. And I get to be a part of that. I may be a small part of that. I may be an insignificant part of that, but I am a part of the greatest thing that God has ever done on this planet. And that is allowing the gospel, the good news of His Son dying on the cross, living a perfect sinless life, laying His life down as a substitutionary atonement for sinners, for His enemies, and then Him rising from the dead, ascending into heaven, seated on the right hand of the throne of God. And that started the church. The Holy Spirit came and filled us. And throughout the last 2,000 years, His truth has been marching on through trials worse than anything we experience as Americans, or as, you may have people in other countries that are going through trials, but very few of them are on a biblical scale. And that may change as we move forward. But whatever we experience, I promise you, no one's going to look back in heaven one day and say, you know what, God, that was just too much. Right. Everybody's going to look back and say, whatever we went through, it was light. Paul says it's a light and a momentary affliction. Well, the things Paul went through were not light and they were not momentary. They were
not to me
deals.
Yeah.
But in comparison with the glory that will be revealed, we have no idea how great our God is, and we have no idea how great the cause that He's using our breath and our life and our blood, sweat, and tears. And I just want to challenge pastors, man, serve Him with everything you have. And you might be like Jeremiah. You might serve your entire ministry and have one convert or zero converts. You may be the next Billy Graham and literally turn the world upside down. I don't know what God's going to use you for, but He does. It's not random. It's for a purpose. And God uses different members of His body in different ways. And we just need to surrender to wherever He leads us, whatever doors He opens up. And I know right now He has me at Oakwood Baptist Church in Chickamauga, Georgia as the youth pastor. And I'm going to serve here and give everything I have for this part of the kingdom of God and do everything I can in this community, this neighborhood, and around the world through partnerships to spread the gospel until I finally do take my final breath.
Nathan, if maybe a pastor's going through a difficult time right now and they'd like to reach out, or if they want to have you come tell your story or learn more about the church planning that's going on in Nepal and how they can get involved in it, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, please reach out to me, Nathan Cravatt. He'll spell my name right on here. Nathan Cravatt on Facebook. I'm on all the social media. I don't do Twitter or Instagram that much, but I'm on there. But Facebook is a great way to reach out to me. And I'll respond to messages on that. I'm in the group. I'm in the group. If anybody wants to reach out to me on there, I'm sure most of your audience is on there. But I'm willing to give my phone number to different individuals if it's something that we need to talk. I'm not going to give it over the air, as they say. But I would love to hear from you. I hear from people almost daily from the Recovering Fundamentalist podcast that have been affected through that ministry. And had a very long conversation a couple days ago with a man who's going through a very difficult situation in his church. And one of my passions is serving other pastors and do whatever I can to help. So please reach out. Love to hear from you.
And I can say what he's saying about getting back to you is absolutely true, because Nathan and I don't know each other. We've got a lot of mutual friends, but I reached out to him through Facebook Messenger about coming on the podcast, and it wasn't long until he responded back, and we got it all worked out. So what he's saying is true. He will get back to you. So reach out to him there. You can reach us here at the Pastors Connection Network by going to pastorsconnectionnetwork.com or finding us on Facebook at Pastors Connection Network. Nathan, thank you so much for taking some time to share your story and challenge us through it. I sure appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thomas, thank you. And thank you, you and James, for what you guys are doing. The network is incredible. I'm a part of it. I read just about everything. I don't respond all the time, but I've been encouraged, and I can see that you guys are helping pastors, and I just want to encourage you in what you're doing. Keep it up, man. It makes a difference.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on the Pastors Connection podcast. May you be inspired and equipped to lead with grace and purpose. Until we meet again.